My way of thinking is, Chair, I'm sorry, would like to put in some legislation, the committee, watch the expenditures of $500, maybe start doing the line item so we can have a better, closer look at what is being spent on our appropriations. If you could read that, we appreciate that.
Well, I think, we do need some flexibility work, and just being all honest, the $500 will cause so much paperwork, so much time lag, and we don't have the staff to do all of that. Right now, we send 1,000. So it's a matter of trust. I mean, if you see that it's not working, I would like to have that right now to say for $500 we have to come to council. I mean, that would bog us down. So with paperwork, time, and getting products and services delivered, because a lot of them are on the spot. I mean, like if there's emergencies and different things going on. So
We'll discuss that.
yeah, and that's like I say, it's not working, because I will be giving you a financial summary going forward, so you can see where each fund is compared to what's budgeted and the revenue. So it's not just a matter of staying within the appropriated numbers. We also have to have revenue to support it. So you can be under budget, but still over expending if the revenue's not coming in. So, you have to read it horizontally as well as vertical. You can't just look at the bottom line, to see. You have to also read it vertical and horizontal to determine. Well, I think I can do, I know I can do that. I've done it before, and if you trust me, and, if we have the next meeting, I'll show you some of the forms that I would give you. We can critique them together, I just have some forms that have worked for me in the past. And it helps you without bogging you down in a lot of paperwork. And that's why I didn't print out all this paper. First of all, it costs money to buy the paper. And so at a glance, if you can get the information from management that you need, you'll be okay. And one of the things that we measure too, I mean, like at this point, at the end of April, we're almost at the end of April, so we're 4 months, which means that we should have at least 66% of our budget left. So you look at that, and when I did that measurement, we have 67%. That's why we have the savings of $129,000. So, I mean, just little benchmarks and checks and balances like that can help you manage without micromanaging, if I may.
I'd like to recognize Councilwoman Tony Jones.
To the chair, to the finance director. When you are going to be putting together the appropriations and the budget that we get, could you also include, if it's not cumbersome, a balance? Because what Eric did last year was he would give us the bill, how much it was, how much we had in the budget, and then just a balance of what's there.
The unspent, unencumbered funds, that would be in this analysis that I would just explain to him.
Okay.
So what you'll see is the budget, you'll see the budget, you'll see what's spent year to date, you'll see what's remaining, which is what you're talking about, the balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Can I ask, through you to possibly the mayor, have we come up with unanticipated expenses and anticipated expenses? I remember in the past, we really never had an idea of retirees to make sure that we had enough money either in the buyout, PRS, whatever we had to do, and any other type of anticipated expenses that may not have been budgeted, for example, possibly like roofs, like possibly in this building, things that would be, maybe big items, or if there's anything else that's going to be close to its breaking point, where it might either need to be replaced. We had some generators, we had some things last year, and when it came to us, it was just like, you can't repair it, it just makes more sense to replace it, but I don't think that was a budgeted expense, and those were the little oopses that I think that kind of adds into our deficit, because we weren't planning for a lot of those things. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could put in like a contingency, like you do like in a contractor's contingency, just for a kind of a cushion for some of these things that may come up.
That's
Can I
good.
answer that?
And,
Kind of, Mr. Chairman. We know we have employees that are looking for other jobs. We know that they're looking at their future here and they don't like what they see, so they're looking to go other places and they're, you know, they've interviewed there. So it's only a matter of time where we're gonna lose some. We just don't know when. And the ones that, again, and this is pretty much the same old story, they don't tell us when they're gonna retire. We may hear about it, we may hear a rumor, but until we get it in writing, which, you know, we currently have one individual who left about a month ago, a few weeks ago, and isn't expected back until June when they say, okay, I'm done. But nothing in writing. So, you know, people do play games. Our employees sometimes enjoy to do that. Why? I don't know. Just the way they are. But unfortunately, you know, that's the nature of the beast and we have to deal with it, and we do. We do have some employees on the other hand who are very faithful and very loyal and very understanding of the city's plight, and they've offered to stretch out their buyout or whatever it is the city owes them and they have told us that they're going to retire. They said, hey, we know the city has some issues and, you know, I'm willing to let you pay me out over a period of 6 months or 9 months or whatever, which is great help to us, and we appreciate and admire those employees and thank them for their service and for their support in that regard. As far as, you know, the roofs on the buildings were all done a few years ago, including this one. So, you know, we don't anticipate any roof replacement or repairs on any of the buildings. They're pretty new.
Are there any other big ticket items that sometimes, you know, just based on tenure, you kind of have an idea of whatever's left out of its livelihood?
Well,
Anticipated. And the same way you could almost anticipate some of the retirements, if people are approaching their 25 years, they may choose to stay longer, but you already know that there's so many people maybe approaching that year where, geez, it's going to be this year, next year, just the anticipation of, rather than wait for the letter to come across
Well,
somebody's desk.
we know that there's some employees who could have retired already eons ago and have not. And, you know, again, that's the luxury of being in a union and, you know, being able to play that card in the game that, you know, they'll hang on and keep working for maybe they need the money, maybe they don't. But, you know, there's also lots of perks that are negotiated in contracts, which we're currently, some of them we're negotiating, some of them we're not. You know, you have longevity, you have this, I just saw an email the other day about a June holiday. There's all kinds of things out there that they play on us or they run on us. But the dispatch center is something that is, as each day passes, brings us closer to beginning. So, you know, we have full-time and part-time dispatchers that are not going to be working here. They're welcome to try out for the new center and apply, and if they get hired, that's great. If they don't, they don't. But there's going to be some costs that are coming down there. You know, as far as these bills, I mean, Morton Salt pretty much screwed us and screwed everybody all winter long with not delivering salt when they, per our contract through ODOT, were supposed to. And I know ODOT is suing Cargill and Morton, and as far as, you know, our stance is they can wait to get paid because they made us wait for weeks, days, months for salt. We're constantly behind. We never caught up with what they promised us or what was due us. So, you know, it is what it is. They're going to have to deal in court with ODOT and a few other municipalities that are suing them. Carbo Paving, we're not paying them anything. That $54,000, most of that is, if not all of it, is reimbursable through the county block grant. But if you drove up Maple Heights Boulevard and you saw how bad that road cracked up like a jigsaw puzzle, that's ridiculous. We are not paying them a penny until they come out here and crack seal that entire street. And if they don't want to, then we'll take it out of the retainer and we'll hire somebody else to do it. The job creation retention grants, we're exercising our right, the city, as to delaying the payment that we owe them. We, in past years, paid them on time, but we also have, in that contract, the right to exercise a delay, which we've done. So, you know, we're on top of those things too. But there are some other things that we are working on in order to bring down costs. And, you know, the Councilman Adams mentioned the health insurance and the 400,000 plus in savings there. That figure mostly, the majority of that money is tied to the unions, to the union employees. And I can tell you that everyone that we're negotiating with is dragging their feet and doesn't want to negotiate anything because they know what the reality is. And they're in full stall mode, which means that the longer they stay in stall, they can keep getting medical benefits or health benefits under the old package. So there again, you have a situation like I mentioned earlier about employees that, you know, will play their cards in this game, which continues to cost us money. There'll be some legislation coming forth concerning waste management and eliminating the recycling program, which if we do that this year, that will save us about $113,000. And if we extend their contract for 2 years, we'll save over $450,000. That's big, that's huge. That gets us, you know, even with everything else in play, really closer to a balanced budget. So I don't think any of us expected to be here or in this situation very long in fiscal watch. I think that, you know, from my conversations with the state, you know, they're another entity that, because their boss is on the ballot this year and has a serious race of an opponent, the last thing they want is all these other communities in Cuyahoga County and even in the state of Ohio being in fiscal caution, watch, or emergency. And I can tell you that, you know, we had some heated, very heated discussions. I did with them, and it is my belief that because of those, that they put us in watch and not emergency. Because as I informed them on the telephone, your problems are not my problems. And I am not like some of the other mayors that you've dealt with, where I'm just going to roll over and let you come in here and steamroll us and do this to us when you're the ones that have caused this to begin with. Because it all started out of the auditor's office and out of the county office. And after that second last conversation, the next one came back that, okay, we'll put you in watch, which is acceptable at this time. That's about all of it. I don't think we plan on being here very long and watch that.
The last thing that I would like to offer the commission is, and I know this is the time, but I would like to say this just out in the open. I would like to offer the services of the housing committee to take over the vacant housing registration. If I could get some information from Rick or yourself, with the letters that were sent, I have no problem doing the research and finding that if that could generate some additional funds. I just have to find someone that's acceptable to receive the checks. I don't know where they need to go.
They should go to finance. That's where they need to go.
So I would like to direct this question to the mayor. I mean, we're facing a financial deficit, and after so many years with an action plan in place, get ourselves out of our fiscal deficit. You know, looking at the funds we have in our various accounts and so forth, and with the layoffs that's been happening over the past few years, will this be the new normal in terms of services to the residents? Or is there will be a way where we will have actually higher as well as increase the services to higher existing levels before we got ourselves into this
Well,
fiscal mess?
you know, that's an interesting question, and it's an interesting answer because we really haven't cut any services yet. I mean, we still plowed all the snow in a pretty timely manner this past year. I mean, there were a couple of times where we got hammered pretty good, but for as depleted as the department was, you know, everyone, and I mean everyone who had a CDL got in a truck with a plow, and that was mechanics, and even the rec department employees helped out, and, you know, everyone got it done, whether even the animal warden at one point was in a truck with a plow. So, you know, everybody pitched in and got it done. So we didn't really, you know, like, cut anything there. In last fall, we still picked up all the leaves. One thing we're looking at this year, like with paint striping, because that's very costly. So we may not be striping everything as much as we did. We may just really concentrate around all of the schools and the main intersections and the main roads. And like Rockside Road was just striped last year after it was resurfaced, and the striping looks really, really good still. So we may not go back there and go over it all again. You know, there's some, like Libby Road, we know the road is going to be torn up, you know, possibly, you know, according to ODOT, maybe they'll start this fall, if not in the spring. So it doesn't make sense for us to go and spend all this money on striping a road that they're just going to come in and grind up anyway. So we're looking at things that are going to save us money that really aren't cutting or hurting the residents. You know, we're still going to have things going on at the park this year. There was an individual who stepped up to take over the softball leagues, which took a big burden off of us because of all the time our rec department spent, you know, working. And we know the boys league left, and that was on their own accord. That was their own decision, so we don't have to spend a lot of time there on those fields. So all of those kind of things free up employees to help out in other departments. So we really haven't, like, you know, we've had some cuts at City Hall. You know, there was something that was said in error a while back, and I want to clarify it, especially for everyone here. I believe it was the council president who said City Hall is closed on Fridays. City Hall is not closed on Fridays. You know, there's quite a few offices that are open. There are a few that are closed on Fridays so that departments can catch up on paperwork because they have a depleted staff. But the building itself is open, and there are departments. Service department is open. The mayor's court is open, so people can pay their traffic tickets or parking tickets. You know, there's departments that are open, and the building's open. So, you know, the government is still functioning. It's still going on. People are still getting service, and we're taking care of complaints as we get them. You know, about potholes and, you know, dead animals in the road and anything else. If grass is going to start, we're going to get on it. We've already been out there, as Councilwoman Jones said, trying to identify the vacant houses from last year, if they're still vacant. If we have any new ones that popped up from last year until this year. So, you know, we have an inspector that's assigned to complaints, and that's it. And grass, so high grass. So, you know, we're doing what we can. We've had a challenge, but we think we've met it pretty well. You know, we had some layoffs here at the senior center, but thank God a lot of the volunteers stepped up and are delivering the meals and helping out, making sure that people are still getting fed, they're homebound, they're hungry. So without them, we'd really be, you know, in a bad predicament. So I think right now we're doing the best we can. We're getting by. We haven't really, you know, started to. We've looked at, we've talked about things. I've talked about them as early as January about worst case scenarios, if we had to close any buildings or downsize any further more staffs, whether that would be, fire, police, whatever, we've talked about those kind of things. Those were never meant to be threats, as some people put on the internet that, there were threatening things made that we were gonna shut down things. Those weren't threats, those were just ideas or opinions that were being talked about. That's all they were. No one was being threatened, or it wasn't used as a form of intimidation or, to try to scare people into voting for something or doing something. So, we may have to revisit those, or hopefully we will not.
Does anyone from the committee have any further questions? Irene, do you have anything else you'd like to share in terms of how we are up to date?
Well-
I had asked you earlier if you could provide a report for how when council made past appropriations to the current date and how we're doing with those appropriations, the use of those funds.
Well, basically, in summary, that was the 121,000. We passed the budget for effective, starting April 1st was when it went into place. So this month of April, we have to input the budget in order to give those comparative numbers you want. And it's not until we close April will not be closed until the following month. And that's why I say in May, we'll have some better numbers because, we'll have the benefit of the full year budget. We were working on a temporary budget up until April the 1st. So now that we have a full year's budget in the system to compare, our activity, we'll be able to see. But again, the month of April has not closed. We don't close the month until the following month. So when you get your report in May, it will be for the month of April, and so on and so forth. And so I think that meeting will be able to get some nuts and bolts and really get down to see what numbers are with the revenue and everything.
Alex, do you have any questions?
Yeah, we was putting onto the Maple Heights website, City Maple Heights website, the revenue and cash reports. I haven't seen them. Are you planning on resubmitting them? Yeah.
Well, there's some pros and cons to that. One of the things that will happen is it's going to generate a lot of questions. No, I don't have a problem with the questions. It's just being able to have staff to answer the questions, to research the information. I would prefer not to at this point. I mean, we can just work within the committee. Of course, the citizens can always pick up stuff at City Hall, but on the website, it would be China. I mean, it's all over the world. So, you could get a call. And I'm just trying to right now keep down the questions from especially uninformed or non-residents. I'd have no problem with the residents seeing and asking questions and giving out reports to them. But when it comes to the general world and non-residents, they're just out there just to be, it takes a lot of time to do record requests and those kinds of things. And with our staffing and all of the work ahead of us right now, if we could delay that, I would be more than gracious and happy. Because
We
of
passed legislation, and I just wondered when you was planning on picking it up, because we do need the transparency with the public. Yeah, right there.
Well, like I said, it's something we can work on. Right now, it's just, there were so many other things going on,
I understand, yeah.
And it's really gearing up, we'll be starting a gap audit soon. And then, of course, the fiscal watch. It takes time to write this plan, and keeping in mind that, as the mayor said, that we have a limited staff to do all of these as well as the day-to-day. I was just trying not to put any more burden. I understand about the legislation.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to go by the wayside.
So does anyone have any further questions?
I have one question. Will we be able to look at the 120-day plan before you submit it?
Yeah, that's what was on the schedule, that I hope to send it to you, June 30th, so that we can discuss it, because it has to be approved by council and the mayor.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? All right, so we've discussed, we confirmed we have our finance meetings the third Monday of each month. That way you have the reports.
Yeah, because we have to close out, usually it's 10 days or so after the close of the month. And sometimes the first meeting goes around on the first of the month or what have you, and it would just be impossible to have a financial statement, the day after the end of the month, because we need time to reconcile the bank statements and what have you. So that third week would be more appropriate that you could present information to the council and to the residents, if you prefer. That would give us time to collect the numbers from the previous month and close out the books. And that's pretty standard, that you usually, within the first 15 days of the following month.
One more
All right,
question.
one last question.
Slipping up here. There was some questions asked about the credit cards. Can you start bringing the receipts in to council so to take a look at, not legislation or anything, just take a look just to see where we're going at with the credit card. We just have it about, I don't know if you was in on that discussion. Limit the number of credit cards. And this way, if anybody wants to look at it, they can look at the credit cards to see what is bought with those payments, bank payments, if any. Who bought it? Where it was bought.
Alex, more so than that, because I think that topic came up, and excuse me for just speaking out. I do know that the mayor says that he has possession of the credit cards, and that people that need to use them usually come to you. But I think a lot of questions that we had is there wasn't like not a purchase order, but like for example, you need to charge tickets, airline tickets, or you need to charge something that you have to pay for in advance, like maybe a seminar. I think what Eric was saying is some certain point in time, just like what you were saying, you want a PO now for each, and I'm just wondering if it would be okay to request something like that for the charges so that you know as well as everybody else.
I didn't put no restrictions on it.
I'm
I
not
didn't put no
restricting, I'm just saying that, if
It's
there's
what we
somebody that
talked
goes
about.
to do something, it
Just
just.
bring in the receipts and we can look at it. That's what we discussed.
Or the
If
approval.
you want
of
to look at the
receipts.
airline tickets, look at it. If you don't, you look at the extra expenditure.
Don't get crazy on me. I wasn't
No.
on that fine.
Mr. Chairman.
Discussed.
Let me just clarify a few things. I don't have possession of credit cards, okay?
This isn't yours.
I have one, okay? Other department heads, like they have a Home Depot, they have a Lowe's, they have some cards at a Sam's Club, if you want to consider that a credit card. I'm not sure what that is, because I don't go to Sam's Club, but they buy things for the buildings, whether it's cleaning or whatever they need, or if here's a good example, the service department council calls, oh, this house, you gotta board this house, it's terrible, okay, so they gotta go buy plywood at Home Depot to go board this house up, and, that's what they use them for. Nobody's buying airline tickets, nobody's doing any traveling or going to any seminars, they haven't for the last 3 years. Okay. Well, it's just, and the reason I'm saying this is because, a couple weeks ago at the candidate forum here at the senior center, somebody said fiscal emergency, and then every speaker that came up after that started saying city's in fiscal emergency. So when you say things that are not true and they're not accurate, and people go with it, then they believe it. So none of those things are happening. And, whatever has been used or spent has been on an emergency basis, and really, it's been really that tight.
So if I rephrase that the right way, then, when they do buy the wood, materials, or whatever the credit card is being used for, it would be nice if you end up getting copies of the receipts. I just know that in the past, and when we had our previous audit that was done, that was one thing that came up where there were no receipts that were being produced for some of the amounts.
And you also, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you also have to remember too, that a lot of these things are reimbursed through donations that are bought by the city or reimbursed by a department or whoever, because we do get donations and things that come in to pay for things that are bought with some of these credit cards to put on a city function, but they are reimbursed. So just because you may see a charge for something, doesn't mean we paid for it if you're not going to consider in the bigger picture that, oh, we had $700 in donations or $1,000 in donations that came in to cover that expense.
Well, no, and that's understood, especially if it comes like, say, and I'm just gonna, not say this, just gonna pretend to use the Sam's Club because we're putting on a function for the city event, it's also gonna be paid for by donations. Well, we know that we have to put out in order to, and that would be something that would be accountable either through the finance director or through the department or department head that's putting on or in charge of that function. So that should be documented.
Should be
And
easy
it
to
is.
verify.
Well, it is. I mean, I can tell you that I've wrote many personal checks back to the city over the years to donate to city events for things for children or the elderly.
We all have.
That, so, you know, but that has to be taken into consideration
I
too.
understand.
Oh, yeah, it'd just be something we could verify, that's all. There's a question, if there's a question. Not saying there's gonna be one. If, it's just transparency, it's on the desk, there it is, you want to question it?
Councilwoman Angie had a question.
The chairman asked us to submit some questions to you. Will you be able to answer on May the 19th?
I responded, did you get the email? I printed it out because I wasn't sure. Let's see, so-
I have it. Thank you.
So if you just want to go down the list.
Well, we can do it at the next meeting if you want to. Okay.
Well, go over this and see if it's clear.
Right.
Then if you have an additional question.
Councilman Jackson.
Now, the only thing I was gonna say, of course, like I say, I'm still learning, not learning, but becoming familiar with all the city operations. The credit cards, has always been in any organization a very sensitive question and, review. My experience is, number one, I've only seen, I think, one credit card with the city. I may be wrong, but from what I've seen, I think it's just the one that the mayor referred to. Just to clarify, like Home Depot, that's not a credit card. They have to have a PO. There's a PO. What they're showing that looks like a credit card is an identification card that only certain persons are authorized to charge, okay? So I just want to clear that up. We don't have all these credit cards. So for example, right now I'm sure it's probably the service of someone, but we have POs for Home Depot. So it comes through the process of a requisition, we give a PO, the bills, receipts, statements come back to the finance department. And like I said, it's not a credit card, it's just basically like an identification card. And so the only one that I'm familiar with, at least has not come across my desk, is that, like the mayor said, it's just the one. So I don't want people to think we have all these credit cards out there.
How many do we have?
Well, to my knowledge, we have
One credit card.
Yeah, to my knowledge.
So
Okay.
we only have one?
We have the one credit card, which I
Plus the
spoke
other.
to.
Right.
And then we have these other credit, they are credit cards.
Account.
They have employees' names on them for Home Depot,
Yeah.
Lowe's, and the Sam's Club cards. I don't know, I haven't seen them, but I know that there's employees that have a Sam's Club card. Because when you go to Sam's Club, you gotta show it to them with your
Right.
picture on it, or else you don't get in and you can't buy anything. So those are the things that are used. Whether they're used in conjunction with POs or not, you still have to have that card with the employee's name on it. Now, we've had those cards, Lowe's and Home Depot, in the past with our service and our rec people have had, they've all had their names on it, whether it's a mechanic
Yeah.
or the director, so that when they need things like Christmas lights, they would go and buy plywood, if they need to buy a bag of cement or something, that's what they do. So whether or not you want to say, is that a credit card? I mean, we all have credit cards and we know what they look like and what they are. So they have been used by our employees for many years. And they're still being used by them, in conjunction with a PO.
And also, when the audits come in, there's two things, well, there are several things that they look at specifically. The first thing they ask for are credit cards. They do a thorough review, what you're asking. So you can rest assured that auditors do that. They will go through any employee reimbursement. You know, they don't just, I mean, they actually pull them all. I've been accustomed to say, these are all of the checks that may have been written to myself, the mayor, or whomever. They do the same for council. And also when they come in like a payroll, first payroll reports they pull would be mine, the mayor, the payroll clerk. So there's some things that does not fall under the random selection. They actually pull those files and go through them one by one. So, and you know, you may have seen notes about credit cards, but they review those differently than they would just regular bills such as from Liberty Ford or other places. So just keep in mind that there is a thorough review. What you're asking is also done in the audit by the auditors.
I think Linda wanted to.
Just to add to that, for instance, we use Sam's Club to buy, and there's only one of my department that has a card that has her name on it. She's the only one that can go. But when she goes, prior to her going, I have to submit a PO to Irene saying how much we're going to spend at Sam's. When she goes to the register, they identify her, let her in the store, they identify her, but she then gives them the purchase order number before they will allow the purchase to go through. So it's not as easy as having a credit card and going in and going to the register and swiping it and buying whatever. And then when we come back, we bring the receipt, and then the receipt is submitted to finance, so.
Because I tell staff, if it's not approved, you eat it. I mean, that's just where we are, you know. So if you go out and buy unauthorized things, then it's yours.
Thank you.
So I signed the recs, the mayor and I signed the purchase orders, then they have the authority to go purchase. But if they go purchase and then come back,
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing no business before us, I'll call this meeting adjourned.
thank you.
Thank you.